but I'll let you handle that one. Go ahead.
Right. Well, historically, when the first Bishop of Rome to call himself Pope, and that word Pope means Bishop of Bishops. The first one who actually took the title of Pope, the first one who actually took the title of Pope was, I believe, Innocent III in 607 A.D., okay? So when the Catholic Church says that Peter was the first Pope, that's a blatant lie. Peter was never even in Rome, okay? And the Christians were being persecuted in Rome up until the time of Constantine, okay? So what we had was at very best, the Christian church was underground, in Rome until Constantine legitimized it, okay? But he only halfway legitimized it. What he did was he made a compromise between the pagans and the Christians. So he didn't make Christianity the state religion. What he did was he made a compromise between the pagans and the Christians and blended their holidays together, okay? And so that's why we have Easter instead of Passover, okay? Because Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me. And that was on Passover. That was on Easter. Of course, there's no reason why we can't celebrate the resurrection or the ascension, okay? But why call it Easter? How does it get a pagan name? Okay?
Well,
and then Christmas.
Changed. Yeah, they just changed it, huh?
Right. And then Christmas, December 25th. Well, all the evidence indicates that he was actually born in the fall, around September 29th. Okay, so but it was convenient to combine the birthday of Christ with the rebirth of the infinite Son, okay, or the eternal Son, which is of course the winter solstice, and of course the reason why it's December 25th because our calendars, have shifted since then from the Julian to the Gregorian. And, people didn't realize that our year was 365 and a quarter days. People were going on the presumption that it were 360 days, and their calendars would never stay in line with the growing and the harvesting seasons, right?
Yeah, that messes it up big time if you're planting on the same time each month of every year, then it changes on you.
Right, and the seasons change on you, right? So the calendars have to be correct, okay? So we finally got a pretty decent calendar.
And that's so that you can plant. And I take it that these aliens aren't too good at farming?
No, they're not good at farming at all. The Jews don't do any farming. In fact, in their Talmud, it says very plainly that farming is the lowest of all occupations. Wow. That's the Jewish attitude toward farming, right?
Okay. Well, let's and we can get into if they want to know who all these people are and why he's saying that we've got some historical podcasts for that. Here's a couple that really connect together. Why was Adam made, and were there two creations as people on the planet was there two creations as in people on the planet before Adam?
Okay, I just wrote a very detailed article on that subject. It's called The Enmity Part 5. And that's also on my website, again, at www.anglo-saxonisrael.com. And we have a search bar in the upper right-hand corner. When you log on, you can just type in enmity, E-N-M-I-T-Y. And I have a 5-part series of articles that explains the prehistory of the planet, okay, and the fact that all the races existed on the planet before Adam and Eve were put in the garden. Okay, Genesis chapter 2, I believe it's verse 8, says that Adam was already alive before being placed in the garden. He lived outside of the garden, was placed into the garden by Yahweh. Okay, and then in chapter 3, verse 23, when Adam is expelled for having sinned, it says that he was put back from whence he came. Okay? So, and then in Genesis chapter 1, verses 23, 24, and 25, we are told that the Che creatures were already here. Okay? The Che creatures includes two-legged animals that have hands and have vocal cords and can even call upon God. For example, in Jonah 3:8, it talks about these Che creatures wearing sackcloth and having hands and praying to God. Okay, so the word che is a very broad zoological term that includes bipeds. It includes bipeds. Okay,
so I guess we opened a big can of worms here then.
Oh yeah. Well, I've documented all this. And so that in Genesis 26 and 27, that's when the Adamites appear. Okay? So the Adamites appear after the other bipeds. Okay?
Okay, so there were people here, and then the Adamite, or the Adamic.
Right. And the Adamic race.
And his descendants appeared
the Adamic
later.
Race was later. So all of these traditions that we have been taught were basically created by the King James translators and earlier traditions, okay? And we're talking about the Flat Earth Society. Okay?
Well,
so
what
these
about
translations.
Go ahead.
These translations are from an unscientific standpoint. Once you read the Bible from a scientific standpoint, it makes perfect sense. Okay? For example, in the book of Job, it says that the earth hangeth on nothing. It's an empty space.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And also,
but not like a pancake. But not like a pancake.
Right. No. There are many scientific statements in the Bible, that, and the problem with, because a lot of people have a problem with certain statements made in the Bible, but those are interpretations. When the King James translators translated the Bible, they put their interpretation into the translation. Okay? So, for example, they considered the flood to be global instead of local. But that's based on simply the mere translation of the word eretz, the Hebrew word eretz, which means land, territory, dirt, and it can mean planet, but in very, very rare instances. In fact, if this is the correct translation, which for me it isn't, it can't possibly be a correct translation, then there's only one or two instances in the whole Bible where the Hebrew word eretz means planet. Okay? The same word is used of Cain when he was driven out of the garden, and it says he was driven from the face of the earth. Was he kicked off the planet?
No, don't think so.
No, he wasn't. He was just kicked out of the garden. Okay? And the same expression is used in Genesis chapter 6, where it says the face of the earth was covered with water. Okay? Now, I agree that there was a universal deluge. There's simply no doubt about this. Okay? That there was a massive downpour of rain all over the planet. And the research I've done suggests that the ocean levels raised about 2 feet as a result of all this rain. Okay,
that'd be a lot.
That's right. Now look at the planet Saturn and Neptune. Do you recall what they look like? They have little discs, little rings around them, right?
Right.
Those rings are ice. Okay, it's quite possible, and I think it's almost certain, that the Earth at one time had rings like this as well, okay? And that something happened to cause these rings of ice to collapse, and this ice fell as rain, okay? It's very clear. For example, we have a situation in which they're constantly digging up artifacts, pre-flood artifacts, that prove certain things. Number one, the atmosphere of the planet was much denser before the flood than after the flood. We have hammerheads that were cast, iron hammerheads, that were cast before the flood, and their density is greater than any iron you can cast today.
Which means there's more pressure.
There was more atmospheric pressure, absolutely. Okay? Yeah. Why? Because the Earth was more like a hothouse or a greenhouse, because there was so much more humidity as a result of all this atmospheric moisture. Okay? And so with this moisture, you would have more temperate temperatures, even as far as the North Pole, okay, which would verify the northern myths that there was a very warm or at least temperate climate even up as far as the North Pole in very, very ancient times. Okay?
Wow.
Hyperborea. I think they called it Hyperborea. Okay? Your European listeners would probably know more about it than I do. But this is when you start comparing the